Hello everybody, Hano here, this time bringing you a full game replay of Malphite. This was requested by one of our YouTube commenters, so I'm going to go ahead and give you a full commentary breakdown of how I play Malphite. This game is a pretty good example. I think I make a few mistakes, but I end up having a lot of assists and helping my team out a lot. My typical route with almost any jungler, just because it's easy and it's pretty safe, I go wolves, blue, wraiths, golems, red, wraiths, wolves. I know that sounds like a lot, but you basically just throw an arc around the jungle and then make your way to red and then come back and throw an arc the other way. So it's really not too bad. It's pretty safe. You are able to get counter jungled by people if they know your route, and it's a pretty standard route. But the thing is, when you go this route, you're typically going to be higher life than if you started somewhere crazy. So while you may not necessarily, when you get to your camp, they may have taken it. Say, like, if a smarter jungler or a faster jungler like Mundo or Shyvana, if they had gone blue without using Smite, they could have come around and taken my red. On Malphite, I'm not really worried about them taking my red. It is extra farm that I'm not going to be getting, but it's really not that critical compared to someone like Shyvana or Master Yi, Hecarim, someone who really needs that red in order to succeed. Now, counter jungling works kind of both ways. They can wait. Just a quick note here. When I go from golems to red, I wait for my granite shield to come back up just to shed that extra damage. I believe I do the same thing when I go from red to wraiths. It's just an extra amount of damage you're not taking. It's going to leave you higher life in the jungle, which is always better. But counter jungling works in both directions. So if you do a standard path and you do it enough times, you know exactly how you can recover from it. And you also know exactly how you can catch people who are trying to counter jungle you. So say you were doing your standard path, you could loop around the back of red, where if they were to take your red, they would be pulling it around the back. So you can, against those kind of junglers, you can go around the back and try and catch them when their life is low from fighting that red buff. And that usually is pretty successful, because by the time you're doing wraiths and on your way to red is when they're doing red, and they usually bank on you not checking up and following on it and just assuming that they took it at level 1. Now, in order for them to not take it at level 1, you want to have your team positioned in such a way that they can see most of the jungle. So a lot of this game is going to be kind of boring, because on Malphite he can gank, and after 6 his ganks are pretty good, but I would consider his major contribution, or major archetype, to be farming jungler. He's going to farm a lot. His ganks are okay, they're not the best, but he's able to just farm extremely well, because he has AoE on his normal attack, and then he can boost his attack and do even more area of effect damage, for those who don't know what AoE is. And he also has an E, which does, of course, another area of effect type thing based on your armor. When I'm jungling, I level my E for 2 reasons. One reason is, the first reason I level my E is it does a lot of damage. So it helps you clear the jungle creeps really quickly, which is critical. You really want to clear those creeps quickly, because it's going to increase your speed, of course, you know, which increases your efficiency, and it'll keep your level up with your solo lane, which is great. Now, the second reason is, when you come to do a gank, it's going to do 2 things for you. It's going to not only do a lot of damage to the enemy laner, because I run magic penetration marks, but it's also going to do, it's going to reduce their attack speed, which is pretty important against some laners such as Tryndamere or Teemo, someone who has, you know, a really reliance on their attack speed. Of course, it helps on bottom lane. Usually doesn't help as much in mid lane, but the extra damage does help. So it's just a really good skill. The next skill I max is my Q, and I originally, for a while, maxed my W next, because it does give you a pretty good boost. If you're trying to take down a tower, it does a little extra damage. If you're trying to gank or be in a team fight, you're going to do more damage to everyone on the team. But really, I think your Q is a better overall skill for chasing and ganking. So if you have 2 ranks in 2 by level 9, you're going to slow them a little more and speed yourself a little more, which is going to end up helping you out in the end. So here I'm coming around for a gank on mid lane, and she's pushed up relatively far. She's going to back off. I see that she uses her Shunpo, which means that she's now gankable. However, my Ahri is not really in a position to do anything, so I leave. If I'm ever in a bush, I don't sit there for more than, say, 10 seconds, 15 seconds. If you're sitting there for longer than that, you're either waiting for an opportunity that isn't going to come, and you get lucky if it does come, or you're just wasting your time and nothing's going to come of it. So that, I could have sat in that bush for another 30 seconds, and Katarina really wouldn't have done much except what she had done. Even if she had wasted her Shunpo, she just could have stayed back. So I'm going to come around here and try and gank top. Top has it warded, so they backed off. Again, I'm not going to sit in this bush. Another option I had to myself is I could have swung around into their jungle, but I'm instead going to give blue to my my mid laner right now. I should be at least. So I'm starting to this blue. And I'm telling my mid laner on voice chat to come and take it. So she comes and takes it, and this is something you should always do on Malphite, and I would say 90% of the junglers, or 95% of the junglers, even if you're blue buff dependent, if your mid has mana, it's really going to help them to have blue, and that's that. So I wait here in this bush because I just hit level 6. I'm asking Nidalee to just play kind of normal, but move forward towards Riven, which is going to bait Riven onto Nidalee exactly like that. So I wait for her to use her hops, and that means that she can't use her mobility any longer. She does have a really good flash, and flashes out of my ultimate, but Nidalee has a pretty good amount of damage, so she was able to jump on Riven and kill her anyway. All is not lost when that happens. Even if they do dodge the knock-up effect of your ultimate, it still gap closes for you, so you're able to get in some extra damage regardless. You're just not necessarily able to get the extra knock-up CC effect. So our mid laner dies. On my way back down from top and on my way to Wraiths, I pick up a few creeps in the mid. And this is something you want to do as a jungler. I could have gone through the jungle, but I was going up and around in order to pick up a little bit more farm, even a little bit. You know, 3, 4, 5 kill creeps is really going to actually put you ahead of the other jungler if they're not doing the same thing. So right now, bottom lane's in a bit of a scuffle. Now, red is up, but I used my smite on golems because I plan on going bottom lane soon. I do this often. Your smite has a finite cooldown, of course. It's really, like, relatively low. So if I know I'm going to be either recalling, ganking a lane, or I want to get somewhere quick, I'll use my smite. Even if I'm smiting one of the small wraiths at the wraith camp, it's an extra, 2 seconds of combat that I'm not using. So it really does become effective, and it's also 10 gold for me. So to use it when it's off cooldown is still beneficial. And that's something you'll see throughout my games. I do use smite on things where if I told people, hey, I just smite the small wolf, they'd kind of be like, you're bad at this game. But realistically, when I have somewhere I need to be, or I'm not going to be back in the jungle for an amount of time, that smite is really irrelevant. I don't need smite when I'm ganking, and I don't need smite when I'm at the summoner platform. So I might as well use it because it only has like a minute cooldown, so it's going to be back up. See, my smite's back up now. If I wanted to take red, I could take red right now. And, that's just a great timing. I mean, if you didn't need the smite, I didn't need to recall and go right to red either. So that extra time picking up wolves and wraiths, it just didn't matter. So I'm going to pick up red. And again, this game's going to be a lot of me talking, because I am a farming jungler on Malphite. I think that he's strongest when he can farm well, and he'll come out of the jungle with like 180 armor and just blast your life away and laugh about it in that like deep rock voice. And that's really his strength. After his ultimate, his ganks are a lot better. They're a lot better. So I'm going to sit around here, and Ahri already used her ultimate, and I just saw her use it. I guess she used it to get out of a fight earlier with Katarina, a little scuffle, so I'm going to leave because it's not really worth my time anymore. She doesn't have the damage output or the ultimate or anything like that, so I'm going to go down to bottom. And I'm going to sit in this Tribush. Now, just sitting in that Tribush does two things for me. It lets me know if they've warded Tribush, which is important. And the second is it gives me enough time to get in. So I flash and use my ultimate in order to pick up the kill on Soraka, which is something that's extremely strong on Malphite. Your flash ultimate gap closing range is just completely absurd. You're able to just you're able to go almost a half a screen away, if not a little more, which is really great for Malphite. And I do it all the time. I can come if you flash ultimate, you can actually come from behind your tower. You don't even have to use the bushes and loop around. You can come from behind your tower in order to pick up a kill, because you're able to just run into the lane really quickly and pick up a kill, or pick up a move buff on like a minion or a champion, and then just flash ult, and you have range from almost like the base of one bush all the way up through the middle of the other bushes. So this game, Katarina is going to get really ahead. So I picked this game for a couple reasons. One is it's not a standard Malphite game because this is blind pick. I really wouldn't. I mean, he's good against Riven on top, but he's really not that good against Katarina or any APs per se. He's decent against bottom lane. Overall, this isn't a game where it doesn't scream Malphite to me, and that's for sure. So I actually forget who their jungler is at this point because we haven't seen him in forever. But this game is not like tailored for Malphite right now. He's not going to be really building a whole bunch of armor and doing a ton of damage, but instead I'm actually going to be building magic resistance on Malphite and still staying offensive using the Abyssal Scepter. So the next time I recall, you're going to see me pick up, I believe it's the next time I recall. One of these times I recall, I'm going to pick up a Negatron Cloak, which is going to counteract this Katarina. Right now, she's not out of control, but I think at the end of the game, she has something like 14 or 15 kills. But through some good play, good teamwork, we're able to take her down because she's the only one on our team that's really just having a stellar performance here. So I always pick up Ninja Tabi on Malphite, if you haven't noticed. There's a couple reasons for that. You can pick up Merc Treads if they have like a crazy heavy CC team, but the Ninja Tabi are cheap and they give you armor, and that's two things that Malphite likes. You can have your level 2 boots in order to gank faster and earlier, but at the same time, it's it's not going to cost you 1250 like Merc Treads does, which is great for Malphite. So I just did a gank on mid, and it wasn't successful, but I'm going to check to see if their Wraiths are available, and I'm also going to sit here. If right here, you're able to ultimate over the wall. So if Ahri landed a good charm and did some damage to Katarina, I would be able to ultimate through the wall at her and just completely take her by surprise. She isn't really able to do that, though, so I kind of just back off after a couple seconds. It's not really worth waiting. It's just like sitting in a bush. If you're waiting for a gank to happen and it doesn't happen, then just stop waiting for it. Because it's really, most times it won't happen. This could be different if you're a lower skill level or lower ELOs or a newer player. And some people will just randomly play safely and randomly not play safe. At that point, you know, it's kind of a harder to tell. But at higher level play, people are typically playing really safe. So I'm going to come around here on bottom and try and pick up a gank. I noticed that they're being a little, you know, Soraka's using her silence. She's not giving Sivir as much mana. Sivir's full mana, so it doesn't really matter at this point. But I'm going to wait until they get to this tower, and then we're going to take that pushing power and we're going to go and start Dragon. Now, Dragon and other team objectives are able to be done when your team has an advantage or are surprising the other team. So right here, bottom lane went missing, but they really didn't notice until Soraka came all the way around to ward right now. Now, if they want to contest us, they're a little out of position because Sivir's on the bottom, Soraka's on the top, so they can't necessarily help each other. We don't know where their mid laner is, So I'm going to play it relatively safe, and we now find their mid laner. Tryndamere's out here. So their jungler is actually good for me, too. Tryndamere does not like Malphite, that's for sure. So we pick up Dragon uncontested, no problem. Bottom lane returns to bottom and keeps farming. We were able to pick up the Dragon because bottom lane was able to just leave. They were pushed up against their tower, they pushed their wave out, and then just left. And the other team is left wondering, are these guys in the bush, or are they bottom, or where are they? So Katarina comes down to gank, and Nidalee teleports in from top. I believe we're going to kill Katarina. I'm not really sure. Here again, I flash ultimate, picking up Soraka. There was a good spell shield that landed down on Sivir. Cat flashes into the middle of us and ultimates and somehow kills all of us. That was part of how she got ahead. So remember I said I made mistakes. I probably should not have flash ulted there. It did get us in there, but then our team decided to focus Soraka because she was the one that was knocked up. If you saw, I chased Sivir and Katarina up through the tower. However, our team decided to focus a little bit closer and knocked up Soraka, and that ended up getting our entire team killed on bottom, which is, of course, never good. So, as a jungler who has an initiation skill, you have to take into consideration that sometimes it's not just if you've done things properly, it's if your team recognizes the cues and what to do as well. So I went in, and the cue was go on the low life carries, whether it be the AP carry or the AD carry. However, what they saw is that Soraka was knocked up and a little bit closer to them, so they decided to go with that instead of using the tower hits I was taking to their advantage and pushing through and picking up the kills on the other two. And what that ended up doing was getting Katarina a quick Shumpo ultimate and picked up a quadra kill, which is going to make it a lot harder for this Ahri, who's already struggling against Katarina right now. So I give Kennen my red. That's something I typically do for my AD. Sometimes it's hard in the earlier game because they're going to want to be farming instead of taking your buffs, but it's still something I like to do on Malphite because red's alright, but they patched it so that your spells no longer apply red buff, so your Q no longer applies red buff, which means that in order to hit them and apply red buff, you of course need to be right next to them. On characters without a gap closer, this is not necessarily the best. Because although Malphite does have a gap closer in his ultimate, it's not someone like Master Yi who can just push a regular button, Q, and all of a sudden he's up in your face and applying red buff. It's much more the case where you have to use your Q to close the gap anyway. So red buff's going to help. It's never going to hurt, of course. It's going to help you once you get onto the laner, but the problem is always getting onto the laner. Whereas Kennen, who has a good range, good base range, and a good base damage, and he's an AD on bottom, is not going to have that problem. So, I'm passing off my blue again to Ahri. Nothing unusual, but something if you don't do, you should probably do. And I'm going to move up here to see if I can pick up a kill on Riven. Now, Riven and Nidalee have been kind of going back and forth most of the game. I don't think either of them are particularly ahead. However, Tryndamere is up here. I don't think they saw me go into that bush, which was advantageous for me. So I start going in and dealing damage to this Tryndamere. And of course, right after I say that you won't use red buff, I start auto-attacking people. So we're just going to do some damage. This is an AP Nidalee. She's not necessarily tanky enough to jump right into the middle of the fight. And while I am, jumping right into the middle of a Riven and Tryndamere would just be a waste of my ultimate, because Riven would hip-hop away, and Tryndamere would spin away, and Endless Rage, so really just would not be worth it to go in on that fight. So instead, we decided to pressure this tower. I stick around to wait in order to get this tower down, and Tryndamere decides to spin in, which was not a very good idea. He ends up wasting his flash. Ahri ends up wasting her ultimate. Jay Moore wastes his flash. That was just a case of bloodthirstiness. They're like, I want the kill. No, I want the kill. No, I want the kill. Because Jay Moore could have easily have turned off Cougar and auto-attacked him once, and it would have been game. If you notice, I didn't waste my flash despite it being down. I also didn't use my ultimate. So Katarina decides to come in here. After this gank, again, after you have a team fight, we have advantage, right? So with that advantage, we tried to counter jungle. However, Katarina saw that and came in and started assaulting us at red buff, but there happened to be 4 of us there. So Ahri landed a good charm, and I knocked her up with my ultimate to get her out of hers, and that's about it. So I'm going to return to taking the red buff, and I can do this for 2 reasons. First reason is their mid is dead, and the second reason is their jungler was dead. So that's going to allow me to just get in here for pretty much for free, and I'm able to use my Q on Riven, who's chasing me, and she's slowed down, I'm sped up. It's, I just get out without any issues. So that's something, it's not necessarily counter jungling, in a fact that you're not proactively going and killing their jungle and seeking them out in it. But more of what it is just taking advantage of the game state. So I know I killed Tryndamere, I know I just killed Katarina, so the only person that can come and contest me taking that red right now is Riven. And since Riven is really AD based, and I have a lot of armor right now, and also my team was still near the area, so Riven could not burst me down in the amount of time it would take me to get to my team, that's for sure. So I really, really, really wasn't scared of anybody on their team, so I was able to just walk in and take the buff. And you'll notice the same thing up on that tower, where I just walked in and started to beat the tower up despite Tryndamere hitting me and Riven being right there, because I have so much armor and I'm at full life that even if they were to aggress onto me, the tower would go down first, and then we had 2 or 3 people there ready to fight that for me. If my team weren't there and I was there by myself, I would have ran at the first sight of Tryndamere, because there's no sense in risking yourself just for a couple more hits on a tower if they're going to have 4 people up there. So bottom lane got into a bit of a scuffle here. I'm not really going to participate in it right now. And I'll do this a lot. I'm doing my golems, which means that I'm here. If they want to start something, I'm already here, but they have an advantage right now. And they're moving in to take dragon. So I'm not really able to jump in on these people when I first came bottom. So instead we try to harass them out of here, but they've already taken dragon. And right now, my team's in a pretty bad position to be fighting. So we're just going to kind of poke at what we can. But if you notice, we were scissoring and sandwiching them, which sometimes is good, but most times is bad, because if we're trying to sandwich them, they can take their group of 4 and move either direction. They can either move up and kill us, or they can move down and kill those 2. So instead, we wait for them to be out of position. I notice this Sivir's a little out of position, so I go and kill her. If you notice how much I don't care about the turret here, I swing back around because I see that this team fight has gone awry, and continue to run because there they are. So I move back in, use an ultimate. Jaymore picks up a good kill with a spear. But the reason I moved back in there is I could have used my ultimate to move back out, but chances are they would have caught me anyway, because Riven can hop, Katarina can shunpo. So it was very likely that I was dead whether I used my ultimate to get out or not. So I instead decided to turn and use my ultimate to aggress onto them, which ended up picking us up a kill as opposed to nothing. And you notice Nidalee didn't die, and the only person who did die was Kennen and Ahri, who was already dead. So it ended up being a 1-for-1 on bottom instead of a 0-for-1, which is fine by me. I'm going to continue. I pick up my Frozen Heart, which is going to help. I also pick up a recurve bow because I like building Wit's End on Malphite. I think my my standard formula for building Malphite is you're going to build 1 tank item, maybe 2 tank items if you need to, that is armor based. So it could be Randuin's, it could be Frozen Heart, it could be Sunfire Cape, whichever you'd prefer. And then I usually go tanky DPS, whether it be Atma's or Wit's End or both. And that ends up With your W in the late game, you end up doing a ton of auto attack damage, and your E will do also a lot of damage, and it'll make you just more of a threat than someone who can knock a group up and take damage, which no one really cares about. So my Frozen Heart's going to allow me to jump into the middle of a team fight, slow everyone's attack speed, and then it's going to allow me to actually live through that team fight. And once I pick up my Wit's End, I'll be able to activate my W and add a lot of auto attack to myself, and actually start to chunk people down. I'll give people a reason to not want to get auto attacked by me, which is pretty important for any tank. You know, tanks aren't really, there is no classical tank archetype in League of Legends, like something like WoW, where, you know, you have tanks who take aggro. The only reason in League of Legends that a tank would take aggro is because it's a threat. So you can, like, you have tanks that are really hard to kill, and they're also threats, like Cho'Gath. And what that means is that you want to be focusing him because he's a real pain in the ass to deal with, and that's that. He disrupts the entire team. He has a huge burst damage. He's just a real jerk. But at the same time, he has a ton of feast stacks. He has a ton of abilities, and he has a ton of armor and magic resistance. He's just an absolute monster to take down. And that's more of what a tank is in League of Legends. Someone who is a threat enough to draw aggro in a fight and can protect their team. So Malphite's pretty good at protecting his team. He can slow the attack damage. He can knock people up. He can slow people. But as far as it comes to threats, he isn't necessarily that much of a threat. So this Katarina keeps picking up kills on our team. She's really ahead, and it's kind of looking bad for us right now. Nunu uses his ultimate on this tower to try and defend it, but Tryndamere and Katarina and Riven and their entire team just jump on top of him. I go right on to Tryndamere here. Now, I do this for a couple reasons. One, because I know I'm not going to take much damage from these armor-based people. And the second reason is I saw Tryndamere blow his ult already, so I knew he wasn't much of a threat. And the third reason is this tower was at full health, so I very much underestimated how much damage Katarina would do. But from everyone else, the three of them were pounding on me, and I was only around half of my life. So I'm fine with that. That was a bit of a mistake on my part. I was kind of getting way too ballsy with the amount of items I had. I figured I was invincible, and Katarina quickly showed me that I'm not. And she's going to show Kennen right now that he's not invincible either. Even though Sivir picked up the kill, Kat did all the work. So right now, Katarina's just an absolute terror. And the problem with Katarina right now is we only have 2 forms of CC to stop her. Well, I guess 3 if you count Kennen. So either Kennen has to be right next to Katarina, who's going to die instantly, and has to be right next to her to stun her. Or I have to use my ultimate, which isn't something that's on cooldown all the time, or Ahri has to hit a charm. All of those things are not necessarily as easy as something like a Scion or a Taric stun, where it's just, oh, Katarina's using her ultimate, push a button. Or a Blitzcrank, where these really good like CC disruption monsters. So she's wreaking havoc on our team because we don't have enough CC to really deal with her, and she's got a few kills early. So she's able to just come in and spin to win, and that's that. So now, prophecy foretold here. I end up picking up a Negatron Cloak because Katarina is getting out of hand. Definitely getting out of hand. So I pick up a Negatron Cloak. And just continue to farm around my jungle. This is a kind of a hard time for most junglers and laners, where in order to go out and farm something, you kind of have to push into enemy territory, which is dangerous, of course, and everything else is cleared, whether it be your jungle, your lane, whatever else. So it's kind of just a really difficult time to know exactly what to be doing. But typically around this time, when this situation arises, you guys want to be grouping together and trying to accomplish objectives, trying to pick off people that are straggling. Like right here, we're going to go down to bottom, try and pick up the kill on this Sivir and the Soraka. And you can see we're moving as a 5, which means that we're really able to do this. We have a flank here We landed a great chain CC on Katarina. There was a great charm landed. I noticed that the charm was landed, and I wasn't going to give Katarina the chance to shumpo out of it, so I immediately went in and ulted. Even though you only hit one person, you don't have to hit 100 people with your ultimate every time. I flashed in order to pick up this kill on Riven, because we have a lot of damage right now. So we went bottom, we killed Sivir, we killed Katarina, we killed Riven. The only people left alive right now are Soraka and Tryndamere. And Tryndamere's really far behind right now. So our team has free reign to do whatever we'd like. We're going to pick up blue buff. We're also going to pick up dragon. I think a better thing to pick up would have been Baron, but it's still a little early, and we're not necessarily that... It's not even that early. It's just that we didn't feel Baron was the thing to do right at this time. Tryndamere comes in, tries to steal dragon. That's something he shouldn't do. If anything, he should have ran into Dragon Pit and spun over our jungle wall, so we couldn't have chased him. But he's really far behind. I don't think it was a good idea to begin with. So that's that. Sivir wastes her spell shield early, which I'm fine with. Definitely fine with that. That means that she can't resist any of the other spells that's going on. We land another charm on Katarina and deal some huge damage to her. So, even though this Katarina's really fed, and you're going to see this in some of your games, if one character on their team is really ahead, it's unless it takes a monumental amount of effort to kill them, it's not going to matter. So yes, Riven being ahead is a huge issue. Why is that? Well, because it takes a monumental amount of effort to kill Riven. She has an AD-based shield. She's really mobile. She just has a ton of tools to say, hey, I don't care about you, and I'm tanky, and I somehow deal enough damage to kill 4 of your teammates. And that's why people like Riven and Udyr and most top laners, and some mid laners, become really just massive threats, because in order to kill them, it takes a huge amount of effort. You know, try killing like a fed Vayne on bottom. Like, you go at her, and unless you have 3 forms of CC, she's just going to tumble cloak out of it. And, you know, you miss the aggro, it reverts to someone else, then you miss an auto attack, and you know, it just becomes like this huge pain in the ass to deal with. Whereas someone like Katarina, yeah, she can shumpo into the middle of our group and deal a whole bunch of damage to us, but that doesn't really matter if we're able to just lock her down. You know, if we're able to use CC on her ultimate, she's useless, because she becomes nothing but a lady that throws daggers and a lady that can teleport around to people, which really isn't that critical. So Nunu picks up a kill on Riven, which is going to allow us to push this forward, because Riven is a pretty critical component of their team right now. After Tryndamere's Endless Rage is done, I go in and I use my ultimate. And I'm also doing that because I can get into this tower range and start taking a whole bunch of damage. If you can see how ridiculously tanky I am right now, it almost doesn't matter that I'm taking tower hits. I took tower hits the entire duration of that fight, and I'm still at a quarter life, which is pretty ridiculous. It's really good for me. If you see, I have my Wit's End, and I now have my Abyssal Scepter, which means that no one on their team really does any damage to me, because Tryndamere, who should have late game damage, is good. I'm able to reduce his attack speed, and I have a lot of armor. Same thing goes for Riven and for their AD carry. And Katarina now can't do much to me because I have a ton of magic resistance. And I also lower everyone's magic resistance, which is going to greatly increase the effectiveness of our AP Nidalee, also of our Nunu ultimate, and it's also going to increase the effectiveness of our Ahri. It actually increases Kennen's effectiveness. Oh my goodness, I can't say that word. Effectiveness. Because even though he's AD, his spells still have a magical component, of course, which is why people build him AP as well. So, having this Abyssal Scepter not only makes me tankier to their entire team, but it makes my team deal more damage to them. And of course, I do magical damage. So we all have some component of magical damage, whether we have physical or magical. It's going to help our team a lot. So it was a great item to pick up in this game. I probably should have gotten it a little bit earlier, but I didn't know that Katarina would go such on a killing spree, so I ended up getting a Wit's End instead. If I had instead gone Negatron Cloak into Abyssal Scepter, then into Wit's End, I would have had a little bit less auto attack damage and over time. However, I would have been able to more easily pick up or live through some of those Katarina ultimates. So the other team feels that it's time to do Baron. Kennen goes in. I'm silenced, but I'm just sitting here on the outskirts of this fight. Kennen gets dropped. It was really not a great idea at all for Kennen to go in there. He's not AP, so he just kind of killed himself, that's for sure. I used my ultimate in order to get away from this fight, and Nunu has a good positioning in that bush in order to try and catch some people. They were a little smarter, so they ended up living through it. I go back in to support my team. This is something I do all the time. When I know I have a good component to add to the team at a range with a character such like as Malphite, I really like to come back into the fight, even if I'm lower life. And that's because most of the sparks have flown, the ultimates have been casted, the huge damage things have been casted, people are lower on life, lower on mana, etc., etc. The only time it's a bad idea is when their 80 carries there and it's full life. But that means I'm able to come back in and slow and deal more damage. I'm also able to help take these towers down. So it helps out a lot, even though I'm lower life. It helps my team a lot. So Nidalee's able to heal me a lot as well. So, we cleaned up that Baron fight. It was a bad idea by them. Kennen did die and kill himself. However, he bought us enough time for the team to get there, so it ended up being worth it. And from that fight, we cleaned them up. We pushed up the middle. We took their Nexus, and that's that. So, I hope you enjoyed this Malphite commentary. I hope it taught you a little bit about Mr. Malphite. He really wants to be farming a lot, but once you get into team fights, you're able to just go in and be a menace. You can knock people up, slow people, slow their attack speed. He has a bunch of variable build paths, so he's not necessarily just good against armor-based attacks. He's just a pretty solid character, good initiation, very fun to play. And if you like this, you can subscribe to my other videos, check out my other playlists, or find me and my blogs over at Skillshot.tv. Thanks, guys.